Hello, this is Elsa. And today I have what I thought was really important after the Truth Summit, a panel with the people interviewed, as many who could make it here, on a topic I consider really important, taking stock and looking forward, moving forward. And I'm just going to take a half second, not on me, not a half second, 30 seconds or less, but on after my father's death. For the next 2 years, there's a park bench on my land overlooking sunset. And when I went to sit there, I felt my father was sitting beside me, taking stock, looking over his life. Now, it was at the end, so I don't know about moving forward. But I think for us, that whole thing of taking stock, that pause to move forward is really important. So everybody will be talking about a minute and a half. And one after another. In fact, I have it in the order that people came in. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to Andrew Johnson. So Andrew, what is it you're taking stock and moving forward?
Thank you very much, Elsa, for organising the event and inviting me to speak on the panel. Very much appreciate all the effort you've put into this initiative. I'd like to just say a few words that I've written down, take just over 90 seconds. On September 11th, 2001, most of the World Trade Center complex in New York City was completely destroyed in a manner never publicly seen before or since. In the words of Dr. Judy Wood, the World Trade Center towers did not burn up, nor did they slam or fall to the ground. They turned mostly to dust in midair. When this happened, I was still asleep and I believed the official story of the events. I had no real understanding of what actually had happened on 9/11. It wasn't until about 2003, well, it was 2003, when reinvestigating the topic of UFOs, which has become quite current again in recent weeks, I had an awakening which led me to the truth about the events of 9/11. So now I find myself contributing to this panel of speakers who seem to have had a similar awakening at some point. In researching the events of 9/11, I read the words of a now deceased but wise Buddhist man who was a tireless advocate, researcher, writer and campaigner who built links between several different religious communities in the UK. Keith Motherson said, "We should tell the truth if we are to honour the dead." Now that I know the technology that was used on 9/11 could be used positively to completely change the world we live in. This technology turned large steel frame buildings to dust, and it was used to steer a hurricane. The group that owns this technology has been able to cover up their obvious crimes for 22 years while running global propaganda campaigns about climate change and energy usage and scarcity. And then a 3-year campaign about a deadly, or rather harmless, respiratory virus. Watching this campaign unfold, I've not much left to read. Watching this campaign unfold really illustrated the gulf of understanding and knowledge between myself and most of the rest of the population, as I saw an all too familiar strategies being employed to keep the truth covered up. I hope the Truth Summit represents another line in the sand, and that speakers and listeners alike will all be willing to widen their knowledge and understanding, even in areas they may be uncomfortable exploring, then tell the truth about what they've learned. And if we can live without envy, hate or greed, we may yet change the world for the better. Thank you.
Hey, great. And by the way, I do hope everyone has a commitment to truth and exploration and learning and interviewing all of you. And starting from before that, I have certainly learned a lot. And so now, Howell, what about you? You're summing up and moving forward. You're taking stock.
First of all, thank you again for all you've done. My issue, as you know, was the collapse of the judicial system in America, which when I started this journey, about 50% of my homeland didn't believe my story. Now everyone knows that I was telling not only the truth, but probably they've seen things even more horrific that are happening in my own nation when they can go after presidents and anyone else and weaponize the system politically. So my journey now is trying to figure out things to do about it. And one thing I think that our panel shares, especially Dr. Fuelmick and those that have been fighting this vaccine hoax and all of the horrific things, or we've allowed our institutions to be captured. His biggest threat and danger is the medical associations that were meant to protect us. Mine was the Bar Association, who was meant to prevent the corruption of that institution, though it is a private monopoly. Both are, and somehow have wormed their way into controlling our governments and our professions. The most important two I can think of, our laws and our medicine. So I've come up with two solutions. We've got to stop allowing monopolies to control our institutions. And number two, under Article 3 of the Constitution, Congress has the authority to create courts, and we need to create courts of the people. I use the term ombudsman, but that sounds so European that Americans don't like it. But Article 3 courts could be created with two powers. One, to prosecute anyone who violates constitutional rights under color of law, which would mean most of the people that have been attacking us, and two, to prosecute those same individuals and their co-conspirators in the private world, such as social media combining with the DOJ and FBI to take our rights of free speech. That is illegal under 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242, carries a prison sentence of 10 years and $1 million fine. That could put a fast, quick stop to all of what they've been doing, attacking people telling the truth. So that's what I'm working on now.
Whoa, very important stuff, everybody. Charles Hoff, who, if people don't know, Canadian doctor, small town doctor, never thought he'd do anything but, and then boom.
Thank you, Elsa. Yeah, this is a very important topic, taking stock, because as we look back, and obviously each of us looked back from our unique perspective. So as a medical doctor, what has horrified me the most is how medical care has been weaponized for political purposes, and how, but by the use of fraudulent science and military-grade propaganda, they have literally weaponized public health. And what has horrified me the most is how few doctors were able to see the absurd ethical breaches of withholding treatments and of just gross misuse of science, that vastly exaggerated risk of harm in order to terrify people and prepare them for these shots. So I think moving forward, what COVID has really been is a giant moral integrity test. It has been a test of moral integrity for the medical profession, for the legal profession, for our political leaders, for public health policymakers, for people in literally every line of business where employers forced their employees to take medical treatments that had very little safety data. Most people should have realized the gross medical breaches that were taking place. So I'm hoping moving forward that people would realize now who they can trust. We have learned that we cannot trust our elected officials because they've been trained by the World Economic Forum. We cannot trust the legacy media. We cannot trust the public health initiatives because they're controlled by big pharma. And so as we go forward, now that we have learned that all of these bodies are untrustworthy, hopefully whatever they've got lined up for us next, we'll be a bit smarter next time, and we won't be so easily deceived.
Thank you. And then Harry Richardson, whose name I've gotten right this time. So
yes, I was saying thank you, Elsa, for organizing everything and mastering the technologies and so forth. We're a group of warriors who are fighting back against the predator class. We all have our particular niches. Mine is anti-white racism at the moment. Why have I chosen this ground to fight on? Well, one reason is because it's a motivation which reveals something about who our enemies are. Our disadvantage is that we are known while our enemies hide in the shadows. Anglophobia, the unrecognized hatred, investigates one motivation of these people, which points us in the right direction to who they are. When we start taking flak, we'll know that we're over at least one target. Anglophobia may be my battlefield, but control of information is what determines whether each of us win or lose. That's why I run the Richardson Post. It might not be the New York Times, but it's the biggest alternative media platform in Australia, and it's the best I can make it. We each of us have audiences of varying sizes, but if we combine our efforts to some degree, we can increase our impact exponentially. I'm happy to offer you each the opportunity to promote yourselves on the Richardson Post if you like. If we can promote and assist each other, it'll increase our impact many times over. All of us have strengths and weaknesses, and by working together, we can achieve so much more because we can complement each other. The problem with people on the right is that we're so individualistic that it's like herding cats. If we can put aside our egos and differences, we'll be unstoppable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It's true, we each do have very different niches, and yet they all come together. So next is Diana West, who's taken on the death of the grown-up and then the infiltration in American Betrayal. So Diana.
Thank you so much, Elsa, and thank you also for organizing this wonderful panel. I've been a journalist for close to 40 years, and I would say that oh golly, really until I began my work, especially on American Betrayal, around 2009, 2010, I didn't understand or even have the tools to understand the extent to which our institutions have been subverted, have been captured, and have essentially become places for us to bang our heads against and waste a lot of energy and time trying to change them. That kind of is probably the lesson of the last decade for me. American Betrayal came out in 2013. It is a story essentially of, yes, subversion, but how it is that our history, our politics, and this is specifically in America, but the wider West as well, but speaking about America, has essentially been a series of lies, top to bottom, including and in the, to quote Mary McCarthy speaking about Lillian Hellman. This, once we end up in the COVID era, became such a clarifying moment for me to understand that it isn't, our energies are less likely to be fulfilling in terms of attacking our institutions than if we turn back to each other, not to attack each other, but to bond with each other and to stand up as individuals, for example, not expecting the governments to save us from digital ID, digital currency, digital enslavement, which I think is our next huge and probably ultimate hurdle, but to turn back to ourselves, our individual rights to say no. And this, I hope, is the lesson of these last very painful years, which so many of you on the panel have done so much to illuminate. That's my taking stock place where I am in 2023.
Fantastic, and thank you. And Ilana, who
Yes.
looks at the ionized skies and transhumanism, bioengineered, etc.
Well, I began, my wakefulness began in the 60s. I was pretty awake in the 60s with the murders of John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. My generation took huge blows from that. And so I started early studying the CIA, for one, and how things were working in America with what we called then the establishment, and now we call the deep state, the corporate takeover of America, and how we wanted to experience life up close. And none of us, for very long in those days, ever made deals with corporate America. We went back to the land. We talked long into the night over philosophic works, over dramas by Ibsen and Bergman, in order to grapple with the question of what is the human being. then I discovered Rudolf Steiner on my way. I was on my way to China to become a Chinese medical doctor. And I took a different life path, not with Steiner, but I never forgot him until years later when I took Waldorf teacher training and became involved for 16 years in the Waldorf movement in starting 4 Waldorf schools in the Pacific Northwest. Did I have to pay attention to that?
No, there's a sound coming in. I don't know. Is somebody have a radio on or something? Now it's silent. But this, yes, this is time. But if everyone's been going over about half a minute or so. So if you'd like to go over half a minute, plus you're each going to have the same amount of time next. You can either respond to each other or continue where you left off.
Right. I think I'm just trying to show the trajectory of how I did not wake up in the last 3 years. I did not wake up with 2001. I was already awake. And at 76, I've now become involved in, I was love to hear what Andrew Johnson said about the 9/11, because that does have to do with what I really write about now. Which if you'd asked me 30 or 40 years ago, would I be writing about geoengineering, namely 3 books, now about to become 5 with a second edition, I would never have believed it. But that's the way the trajectory led me to see what was bringing this country low. And I can talk about dark things, I can talk about going down with the Titanic, but ultimately I have so much for the future. Because the future for me is very long.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. And to be continued in the second round. And now Richard Gage with a different view on 9/11, but also starting with a sense of betrayal, being betrayed by the official narrative. Richard.
Thank you, Elsa. I started the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth 18 years ago. We've grown it to 3,600 architects and engineers who are calling for a new investigation into the destruction of all 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers on 9/11. I'm now working with my wife in order to get the word out about the explosive evidence. We're talking thermite and nanothermite incendiaries, which the forensic evidence indisputably, overwhelmingly and irrefutably shows for all 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers. So it's an inside operation, which is a false flag operation designed, just like COVID, to control the American people through fear. And so taking stock and moving forward, I think the cross-pollination of all of these truth movements, particularly the COVID truth movement, needs to take place with the getting out of the parallels between them, foreknowledge, insider trading, drills that take place in each case before the events, the abuse of science, creating a climate of fear, a solution that's far worse than the original problem, false accounts by officials, extreme control of the narrative, no real investigation, an elusive, powerful enemy, control of information and a shifting narrative by top agencies and NGOs, media censorship of and attacks on critical questioning, and implementation of draconian policies and surveillance. These are engineered outcomes that are created by these false flag operations, which we have to wake the American people up to. So that's what I'm doing going forward.
Great, thank you. Celeste, who is explaining things in everyday language to everyday people and not finding it the very easiest thing. I remember that you talked to me about this, that you gave one version and things like went over their head. And so here's Celeste Solem, whom I found very understandable.
So I guess my awakening came at 5 years old. My dad was in naval warfare and he sat me on his knee and he said, "The next genocide is on your watch." And so I spent all my days getting skill sets, paying attention, so that I could grapple with the issues of the day, not really knowing how they would unfold. Of course, I was working at FEMA during 9/11. That was a very long day, I can tell you. I knew 2 years prior that it was an inside job. But I'm just finishing up a 6-week webinar on synthetic biology. And so that has really rocked my world, both as far as an existential threat to all of humanity, every man, woman, child, all of biological life, but also there are solutions and glimmers of hope. But it's just this flash. It's almost like a lightning storm. So there's this dark threat right now that threatens each one of us. And yet there's flashes now of spiritual solutions and physical solutions. And then there's this advanced weaponry that Richard might like to get to know about, that is being used and harnessed, making another contrast in this lightning storm that we're in. It's an electrically charged time that we live in. There is, like Alana, I believe that we have a lot to be hopeful for, even though we have this threat. But before I came on, I was grappling with, okay, so I'm over the target. I just finished this synthetic biology 8-part webinar. And so AI has decided to shut me down. So now I think one of the next steps for all of us truth tellers is going to be figuring a way to navigate how are we going to communicate not only between ourselves, but with our audiences in light. I actually am doing an expose. I started writing it this morning, and I went to get a drink to stay hydrated. And I watched it rewrite to UN compliance before my very eyes. My hands were not even on the computer. I made the mistake last night of getting the images that I wanted for this expose. And so they kind of knew what I was going to be writing about and literally took control of my computer. So I believe that is going to be a really near present hurdle that we're all going to have to figure out with our techie friends. Because like Elena and many of you, I can talk tech all day long, but actually navigating it is very difficult.
It does sound like a challenge I hadn't even thought of, that my writing would be rewritten. I suppose if I cut from the internet, if I cut off my internet connection on a computer, they couldn't do it. But I'm going to leave that because there is Alex Newman, whose work most touched me because he was writing about the crimes of the educators, about the crimes against children. And I wanted to be sure that crimes against children were dealt with. So, but he's done ever so much more. So I don't know what you're going to talk about, taking stock moving forward.
Thank you, Elsa. Thanks to all the panelists. Wonderful discussion here. And I think I will deal with education. I believe this is the most important issue. It transcends all of the other issues. You know, all the points that have been mentioned are hugely important. There are numerous existential threats facing our countries, our liberties, our families, our communities. There's no doubt about it. But the one thread that runs through every single one of those threats is the indoctrination, sexualization, the dumbing down, and the weaponization of our children. It's happening on an industrial scale, not even just in the government indoctrination centers masquerading as schools, but even increasingly in private schools. So we have to deal with this. We literally have to deal with this. If this one issue is not addressed, all the other issues that we care about, we're going to lose. It's over. We might as well just give up and, go try to build a bunker or something, because there's not going to be any way back. And so I don't say that to sound overly dramatic or pessimistic, just to emphasize the importance of this. Our children need to be taught how to think. They need to be taught the truth, and they need to be taught the basics like reading so that they can educate themselves. If you look at the government's own data, the vast majority of Americans cannot read. And, they'll say, well, they read at a really low level. They're not reading. They've memorized a few hundred or a few thousand words so they can kind of decipher what's on a page, but they're not truly reading. And so they're never going to pick up a Bible. They're never going to pick up a history book. They're never going to pick up a copy of the U.S. Constitution to find out what we're losing. We must address this threat to our children. It runs through every other one of the threats that we're facing. And I'm at 90 seconds. So thank you so much for having me on the panel, Elsa, and for all that you are doing.
Everybody has gone over, you could have as well. Last and not least, because last is never least. Well, it could be, it's a possibility, but it's not going to happen today. Reiner Filmich, Corona Committee, a lawyer, etc. ICIC. I love the initials ICIC because I'm going to interrupt here and interject something. Rule number 1 of survival, of the 12 rules of survival from Lawrence Gonzalez: perceive and believe. In other words, ICIC. I think this is absolutely fundamental to the Truth Summit. If it's about synthetic biology, if it's about an ionized sky, it's about the medical system, it's about education. So I wasn't going to talk, but I'm sorry, I can't help it. Over to you, Reiner. You are mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. It's a real honor to be on this panel and to finally see some of the people who I've been hearing about or whose podcasts or videos I've been listening to, because most of the time I just don't have the time to watch, but I listen. So in taking stock, there's 2 pieces of information that I think may be of interest to this group and to our audience. One is, after having interviewed more than 450 experts from all over the world, including Catherine Austin Fitts, Dr. Mike Eden. I wish I had all of you on our first the Corona Investigative Committee and now ICIC, but it's not too late. We're working on that. So one is, the most important realization that I had is that it's really psychology that's at the heart of this. When you, Charles, said it's a question of moral integrity, how can so many people have sold out their moral integrity? I think it has to do with psychology. We have to take a much closer look at psychology, because if you take a look at what happened with the alleged dangerous novel coronavirus, which ultimately led people or made people take the shots, it was just an illusion. It was just an illusion. There was nothing there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to publish a dossier very soon that is going to deal with the psychology, the psychopaths who are sitting in the positions of power, they think. And the other piece of information, I know I've gone over my time, but the other piece of information is that there is a way out of this, not just because we can stop it, but also because we can hold everyone responsible. Our group of international attorneys has come upon this totally 100% independent judiciary of the Maori in New Zealand. And very soon, towards the end of August, early September, we will hold everyone responsible. Everyone, including the doctors, the lawyers, everyone.
Thank you very much, all of you. And I don't know if Sweden has swallowed Alex or he has been kicked off by a nasty internet, but I'm just going to do a round again. All of you, you can either continue with what you were talking about, or you've heard a bunch of other people who are also very interesting. So I'll just do the same round again, except of course for Alex, because he's not here. And it's any further comments, further thoughts going forward. Most of you had more time for taking stock than looking forward. So I'll just start it again. Andrew, you are the person I am starting with, Andrew Johnson.
Thank you very much again, Elsa, and thanks to all the other panelists for all the work that they've been doing. Yes, it's very difficult to remain optimistic at times with everything that's been happening. And I think for those of us that have been seeing these various stunts that have been pulled and then lied about, you know, again, you quickly become jaded and you think, well, when are we going to get out of this? So that's quite hard to get around at times. A couple of points to come back on, really. I think it's very important that people should understand that there are layers of truth, particularly with very important topics. And there is, for example, what we discovered with 9/11, for example, is there is the official story, then there's the official conspiracy theory, and then there's the truth. And a couple of points of fact, for example, with the World Trade Center itself, people have to understand, for example, that the World Trade Center steel, that's essentially a form of iron, that was on the inside. We had 47 huge interior columns and 246 exterior columns of smaller size. And then on the outside, we had an aluminium alloy. If you know about chemistry, I did chemistry up to top of high school. Thermite, for example, there are different forms of thermite, but one form is made of aluminium and iron oxide. Now, of course, iron oxide can come from steel because it rusts. The World Trade Center stood for 30 years, so there was thermite in the World Trade Center. Essentially, it was made of thermite. So people have to understand this. Anyone on the panel that doesn't understand that, they can look at my website and the articles I've written along those lines. But there's layers of the truth, folks, and I've seen this happen with COVID. I've seen it happen with other things. So please bear that in mind, everyone.
I think it is fabulous to explore and keep exploring and exploring some more. I know several people on the panel. I got somebody who wrote to me, and I think Alana and Celeste and Donna and Dr. Mihalcha were three of them who were considered a little bit off the wall. That does not mean you are not right on the mark and right over the target. Okay, so back to you, Howell.
Well, first of all, I'm amazed at the breadth and depth of this panel. And I think, again, back to almost every one of our situations, we need to challenge the institutions with courage and vigor. Do like Dr. Fuelmick has done, find alternatives. The Maori is just a brilliant idea. My brother happens to be an honorary Maori, by the way, because he restored their lands for the last 23 years, and they made him an honorary member. But we've got to develop our own institutions, a parallel economy, which we should all be not dealing with any BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, the cabal that Oxfam says owns 92% of our world. Cut them off, shut them down, quit dealing with them, create our own, do not allow the medical associations and the bar associations, and it's down to the point where you have to be licensed to braid hair. We worked on a case in Texas where a woman was arrested and her children went into foster care because she was braiding hair. I mean, this has gone too far. We've got to take back our institutions. We'll therefore take back our lives, create alternative courts, which we can do under Article 3. And the time is getting ripe for Congress, now that they've seen the complete dissolution of our nation and its resources being weaponized against the people, that I think we may actually have hope. When I first started giving speeches about it 10 years ago, there were chuckles in the room. And the head of the Judiciary Committee, Bob Blatt, said that will never happen in America. By damn, it will happen, I think, and we're getting ready to break the mold.
Great, thank you. Charles.
Thank you, Elsa. I think with all of the different, it's wonderful, the variety of perspectives and backgrounds that each of us come from. And I think it's critical to bring all of these different perspectives. But I think the one issue that probably binds us all together is our frustration with the legal system. And so what Reiner has shared with us, and I'd heard of what was happening with the Maori, is the greatest beacon of hope, I think, because the justice system is no longer just. It appears to have been bought. It appears to have been railroaded. The justice system has become a political tool, just like public health has. And so I think thinking outside of the box and creating some other way of holding these tyrants accountable is absolutely the most critical thing, because each one of us has exposed different just frauds or gross ethical or breaches in the misuse of our children or of each of us has brought our own perspective. So I think the real key in moving forward is along the lines of what Reiner has mentioned, is actually bringing these criminals to book, bringing them to account through a just legal system.
We could certainly stand having that. Harry.
Okay, so I'll just share probably one of the most important pieces of knowledge I've ever, or probably the most important piece of knowledge I've ever, or revelation, was in realizing how little I know. Like if I studied ants for the rest of my life, I probably couldn't figure out 1% of what there is to know about ants, let alone a smartphone or whatever. So we all know really little. And as you go through life, you realize you start off with information and you think that's true. And then you find there's another layer and another layer and another layer. And the difference between us and many people is that we're prepared to abandon what we knew, what we thought we knew, and move on. And that's a really difficult thing to do. I think even for us, who are probably in the A grade amongst humanity at doing that, it's very difficult to question where you were and say, no, I need to move on. That actually was wrong. When people say to us, no, you really need to watch this video, you really need to question this. It's always hard to do that. And being able to do that is really important for all of us. Optimism, we're all warriors, as I said. One of the most important things for a warrior is optimism. If you are a pessimist, if you go into a fight thinking you can't win, you won't win. So it's very important for us all to keep believing that we're going to win this. This fight was raging before we came into this world. It'll be raging after we go out of it. It will never stop. What we've got at the moment, we are the people fighting this fight. There's an old saying by there's a racing car driver, Jackie Stewart, and he said, he looked around and he said, the best racing driver is probably up there in the stands watching us, but we're the guys in the cars. And that's who we are. We're the guys in the cars who are running the race, and we need to fight to the best of our ability and pass it on to the next generation.
I'm so tempted to say, I hope we don't need to pass it on to the next generation. So I will say it. I really do want this to stop, but this would be a 2-hour debate at least. Diana.
Yes, having taken stock and gone around again, I want to present a problem to the House to solve, which is we're all speaking together and it truly is a thrill. I wish I could really, really talk for quite a while here, but they're going to take away our ability to communicate online. I mean, I think that has to be something that we start preparing for. And Celeste was talking about AI rewriting her screen. I mean, terrifying. I actually have purchased in recent months an old manual typewriter just to kind of get the eyes off me when I'm working from time to time, kind of warming up. But that in itself, of course, is not the solution. We have to figure out some networks, again, rediscover networks again that are not dependent on the internet. And that goes back to, I don't know, the old-fashioned newsletter, finding out our telephone numbers, our addresses. I mean, I think that it is paramount to understand that this is going to ramp up and that gatherings like this are not necessarily going to be possible at this time next year or at some point in the future. And so I just want everyone to start trying to figure out what to do next to continue to reach each other and reach audiences. And I have not done that myself. I'm just thinking about it today as I see this very wide-ranging group brought together in such an exciting way. They're not going to let us continue to do that. So I'm just putting that out there.
And wide-ranging, we have Australia, Poland, South Africa. I don't know if you're still in South Africa. And of course, there are Great Britain, and of course, there's the occasional person in the United States. So yeah, it's not only wide-ranging ideas, we're all over the place. Alana.
Yes, I wanted to just add, given that I went over before, this geoengineering thing, and I'm sure others have experienced this, one of the most far-reaching experiences I've had in this is how much the geoengineering, which is one of the quietest subjects in America, if you haven't noticed, and that's because it's highly classified. It's not just about solar radiation management and climate change and all that. It's about a lot more than that. But how it touches everything. It touches electromagnetics, the 5G, the 6G problem. It touches schools. It touches everything. And that's why the title of my last book, the third book, which is how the environment has been weaponized by chemistry, electromagnetics, nanotechnology, all for the sake of what? Synthetic biology. I mean, how could I have figured that out day one, 13 years ago, when I first came across this problem of this huge atmospheric change going on? And I've turned now, and Celeste knows this because Celeste has been a teacher of mine at the beginning when I was just learning about things that are in the serums. This is huge, this synthetic biology, nanotechnology problem. And I just want it part of the discussion. I'm not interested in dragging everyone away from their particular activism to what I see as being hugely, hugely important, if not for any other reason, its absence from just about everywhere, even in alternative media. So that's what I work for, is to bring it into the public consciousness, this one elephant in the living room that I believe is the greatest elephant there. And we saw it in 9/11. We didn't know what we were looking at, but it was present in 9/11, not just with I'm
going to push it on.
Oh, yes, I'll stop there.
Okay, so I'm going to push it on. And by the way, one of the things I think is you don't have to change your focus because someone else is doing education, someone else is doing law, etc. And I did not want to do a truth summit on one truth. I wanted it as diverse as possible.
Yeah.
Richard.
Well, I'll pick it up for you, Ilana, because to me, the 9/11 issue is the easiest domino to start the rest of them rolling. And I think people, all of us, need to understand the basic points of evidence, such as the fact that there's 156 first responders who were recorded orally talking about sounds of explosions being blown around the building by explosions, seeing explosions, many of them before the towers ever collapsed. All of these explosions, which were also picked up by 36 of 40 of the reporters, who were 22 of which are witnesses of explosions. We zoom in on the towers and we can see every third floor exploding out well below what we're told was a gravitational collapse. So I think that's really important for us to know about. And the seismic evidence shows the explosions before the collapse of the building, which corroborates the testimony of the first responders. The tripod mounted cameras that have been studied and peer reviewed show that they're shaking 6 to 10 seconds before the towers ever collapsed, again corroborating the first responders. And the extreme heat, as documented not only by FEMA, but by the U.S. Geological Survey and OSHA and many others, as being up to 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
With all of this melted steel, which is, again, takes 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit to even begin to melt. But FEMA documents 4,000 degree temperatures in evaporation of steel and hot corrosion attack on the steel with liquid molten iron, which is the byproduct of thermite, as is these 4,000 degree temperatures, which are also indicated. So all of this points to a very important and very easy to understand set of evidence, which is again irrefutable and overwhelming and easy to use and to tell people about. We've documented it in our documentary
I'm
here,
going to pass it on. I'm going to
9/11
pass it
crime
on.
scene to courtroom, and 9/11 explosive evidence experts speak out. So I encourage everybody to watch it. Thanks, Elsa.
I encourage everyone, watch everything. Celeste, synthetic biology, or where are you going to go now?
Okay, so I think I'll tag on just to let Richard know that thermite and nanite are synthetic biology, just to give you a little thing. And then, you know, as we are moving forward, I think so each of us represent a particular niche, like this, you know, this one, this one, this one, this one. But what I learned when covering the Havana syndrome is they kept saying that we have been siloed off. So there is great danger for all of us if we just stay like this. What we have to do is network like this, because what we are facing is an integrated weapon system. And the only way to overcome that system is for us to get out of our little niches and come together and form a unified front. Another thing that I think everybody likes hope, but we as truth tellers don't want to give hopium. We want truth hope. We really want to do that. So in light of that, I want to provide you all a algorithm that I learned at FEMA that I tested in every single sector through decades. And that is 3% of people will hold to their ideology without wavering. They will not compromise. They will not be moved. They have their lines drawn in the sand. 7% of people will do something once or twice, which means they might participate in a rally. They might write their congressman, you know, something. They might boycott something, but they're, you know, it's just an occasional thing. But 90% of people will do nothing, even if it means their death and the death of their loved ones. That is why the government was so confident when they rolled out the COVID situation. They knew that 97% would comply. So as truth tellers, we need to understand that if you're just running into a rock with somebody, you're trying to convey truth, and they're just like in a different dimension, just leave it be. Don't take it personally. Move on and go to the next person. Go to that, fortify that, the 3%, and maybe reach out occasionally to the 7% who might become part of the 3%, but that will keep you as warriors, has been described, encouraged, positive, and focused as we go forward.
Great. And then Reiner.
I agree. It's all about unity. We need to connect with each other because that's what gives us the strength that we need in order to overcome the monsters on the other side. We're basically dealing with psychopaths. That's the conclusion that I have come to after having read many books on psychopathy. I had no idea what this really means because you use the term, oh, he's a psychopath very easily. But if you take a closer look, pretty much all of the people who run the show, either in politics or the media or in science. I mean, look at Fauci, or look at the woman who runs the European Union. They're definitely psychopaths. I'm not going to make a diagnosis here, but from everything I've seen and read now in the meantime, there can be no doubt in my mind. So it is absolutely correct that we shouldn't waste our time on them. We cannot convince them of anything because they have an agenda. They only care about themselves. They have no regrets about anything. They have no empathy. So you can't expect that from them. We need to focus on ourselves, on our group, the resistance, because we're going to be the ones who will build a new system, a real system of democracy. But what it really takes ultimately is justice, because without justice, there can be no peace. There can be no peace. These people must not get away with this. Now, I filed a number of cases in Germany full well knowing that it's probably not going to work because the German judiciary is especially corrupt, especially corrupt. This is not to say that everyone in it is corrupt, but I'd say 90%, 95% of all the judges are corrupt. And it doesn't mean that they get paid, but they're worried about their careers. They're not going to do anything that's not going to further their careers. Now, that is why ultimately, after all of us, all of the lawyers have tried to file cases within their own jurisdictions, within the system, why I was so happy when Dexter Reinefeld, who is a South African attorney, came across the Maori. He saw a New Zealander, she's New Zealander British, and she gave an interview on the Stu Peters show. And then he called me and said, hey, look, this could be it. This could be a really, truly 100% independent judiciary. And it is, because they never ceded their independence. They're into spirituality. That is part of their legal system, actually. And it's very simple. It applies natural law so that anyone will be able to understand what's going on, which is not true for our legalese system, I should say. So this is what it's going to boil down to. We're going to continue to challenge the system, of course, but outside of the system, there is an independent judiciary, which is not a kangaroo court, but they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they must be taken seriously because their judgments are going to be enforceable. And even the international cases will be enforced. And even if in the beginning we will have to
I am going to.
attach their property in New Zealand.
We know where you're heading. Justice will prevail. We will win. We'll get the bad guys.
We will.
This is a cowboy scenario.
Also, may I make a global suggestion, echoing Harry and again also Diana and others. This Richardson Post is absolutely amazing. Harry has created one of the truly final remaining independent platforms. I've written about Dr. Fulmick 3 or 4 times in the last few years for Harry, but why don't we get Dr. Fulmick to write for it? Why don't we get Diana to write? Why don't we expose these issues? That might be our mutual platform. We've been attacked and shut down by every social media platform, but we've never knowingly told a lie. So the truth tellers, it's Harry's the editor and the owner, but I love it. It's absolutely the greatest place for people to tell these stories.
By the way, there's also Substack, and the Richardson Post is now on Substack. So write for yourself and send your stuff to Harry. You know, because it's got another audience. The Richardson Post, which was it media with a bias for truth, kind of resonates with many of us. So if you write something and you post it on your own, also send it to Harry and it'll get a double exposure. Thank you, all of you, ever so much. This is wonderful hearing that, and it's wonderful getting all the many perspectives. And I know all of you would have had ever so much more to say. And it's kind of going, okay, there's so much to say. On the other hand, what I want to do is leave some time for Q&A now. So I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to go to Q&A and we'll see what happens there. And again, a million times over, thank you so much for taking part in the Truth Summit and taking part in the panel. I think this is one way I can just feel the energy that we do move forward.
Just a word there, Elsa, I'm going to have to bail out very soon. I've got work.
That's fine. I am just trying to push the stop recording button. It's up here somewhere, or is it down here? Recording is now in progress, so here we are again. Now questions, panelists, to each other.
I just had a quick point. It's getting late here in Eastern Europe and we have patients very early at the clinic in the morning. So if anyone has a question, I'll stay. If not, I will bid you adieu and a good night and look forward to seeing you all soon on the Richardson Post.
Where are you in Eastern Europe?
Warsaw. In fact, when you were here last year, sir, for the Nuremberg 2.0, I was watching and thrilled to see it kicked off, and I filed a constitutional challenge at the Ombudsman Court here in Warsaw, which they ignored. But anyway, it's on record, and their constitution forbid what they did in 3 different articles. So, you know, we're doing the fighting that we can as a foreigner.
What's so cool about Eastern Europe is that they're probably going to lead the way in taking down one of these global institutions, the EU, because they're about to leave one after another. And I think this is great because the EU has nothing to do with Europe. Everyone in Europe hates it.
Me too. And Greece just voted with their feet yesterday. They have a conservative government, but the whole Visegrad group here, I'm just a little bit offended that the Polish government is playing footsie with NATO and Biden right now. They're endangering us. I'm taking iodine now because the nuclear drift from Boris Johnson's spent uranium shells got 200 miles into Poland. So my voice is still gone. Anyway, it's getting very lethal. So anyway, next time you're in Warsaw, I'll buy you lunch.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Thank you very much. And panel, it was a wonderful meeting you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do widzenia.
All right. Any further questions, comments?
Yes, I'd just like to say regarding what Mr. Gage has been saying, the answers to all of his points really are in the book Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood. And I know that Mr. Gage has a copy of that book, and if anybody wants to find out about that, that's on my website, checktheevidence.com, and they can write to me there. And I really think this is a very important issue. Some people say the details of 9/11 don't matter. Well, they do, and the way that those details are being covered up with layers and well-funded groups, it's very important that people understand that, because there are those layers operating elsewhere. So it may be you think you found the truth, but actually there is another layer in the way, and we have smooth operators trying to convince you of certain things using a certain vocabulary and certain things like neurolinguistic programming and various techniques like that, which we see in advertising to try and advertise these things to you. So I'd just like to make people aware of that, and that's been my experience quite markedly, and I've seen it in operation. I've seen it with people I know. I've seen them sort of stab me in the back intellectually, not physically, thankfully. So this is all documented in my books, and the people that want to read those are all free. So, you know, I'm not making any money off this. I don't get paid to do this. I work for the Open University still. They did want to get rid of me, but that was after they published one of my articles back in 2007, thankfully. You know, all those tactics I'm sure are familiar to many of the panelists here. There are well-funded groups trying to cover up obvious evidence and masquerade, put other things forward which masquerade as evidence, but actually they're not. So that's just a few words in response from me, and thank you to all of the panelists for.
I've had a thought here, actually. Richard Gage, you are phenomenal at getting people together, at getting this film. Andrew and Judy have evidence that you are not paying attention to, because I have been reading the book.
Oh, I read the book too. Yeah.
You read the book too. Okay,
yeah,
so
I found it to be almost pure fantasy.
Okay,
actually.
there was absolutely no. Okay, so I'm not gonna get into the discussion then. What my fantasy was, you're publicizing your ability to push it out, combined with the directed energy stuff, because the directed energy weapons, these definitely exist. If not on 9/11, they definitely exist elsewhere. And another word for it is free energy. If we had that energy, that would be enormously powerful for the world.
Oh yeah.
That would be so incredible, and that is there. That's why I'm saying I care less about if it's the forest fire in California or in Australia than that this free energy directed weaponry exists, and somebody has it and is using it. In those forest fires, you should look, it's totally incontrovertible. I
Yeah,
don't,
it
but,
is.
and by the way, it's not only incontrovertible, it's ignored. You would think that if the officials cared about anything, they'd all be going around going, oh my God, this is obviously not a forest fire. If anybody's been near one campfire, they know that if you have a fire that burns down a house, you don't
And how
leave
about the
the-
reporters?
Yep.
Yeah,
How about all the reporters who walk through those
Absolutely.
areas and don't report
Yes.
it?
Yes, and the person who's documented it, most of his friends think he's a nutcase. So what is going on with the blindness? So I'm saying it's incontrovertible. You do not have a tree, and one of the stumps, it's blackened on the inside, and there are many photos of trees blackened on the inside. This is not the way forest fires go. If you've ever had a fire, it'll burn off, and it might still be alive inside and shoots go up, etc. This is not how this is working.
If I may interject here, Elsa,
Of course.
the evidence for the forest fires is very peculiar, but it's not as well documented as what happened on 9/11. In Dr. Judy Wood's book, you'll see the results of surveys of 40,000 pictures, survey of 500 witness accounts of the day. Also, you'll see that these directed energy weapons are not like anything that you see advertised by the military, such as the airborne laser or the anything like that. These are a completely different class of technology, which is completely in the black world. And that's how I came to understand it, because I investigated the UFO cover-up, which is also involves the black world, which is not spoken about. People don't know about it. A lot of that stuff goes back to Los Alamos National Laboratories, for example. And then you have figures like Colonel John Alexander, who worked for them and went to see John Hutchison in 1983. So this technology, this black technology, has a history which is decades old and probably goes back to the 1940s. This is not a fantasy. This is not what is in Dr. Wood's book is not a fantasy, and she's not a witch, which is what Mr. Gage has called her in the past.
I didn't call her a witch.
I've got a recording of you saying that, sir. So
No,
I'm afraid you did.
Not me.
That's what you implied. That's what you implied. You didn't call her a witch, but you said that if she's writing a book like that, she's practicing witchcraft. The recording of you saying that you did. It's on my website.
Okay,
sir.
you know what?
Send it to
I'm
me.
going to
I think
say
it's very
that
important that people understand the truth here and what those truths are and why they're important.
I
You've covered some of
recommend
that, Elsa.
I recommend everyone read the book, and you
Yes,
can
I do
also
too.
listen to Richard Gage. I recommend that everyone get all the information, and I think also I'm for don't put your energy against each other. Put your energy out into the world. On both sides. I do have a question for you, Richard, and that is, I know it started with you recognizing one betrayal, the government of you, but it didn't matter if it's the government. It could have been whatever outside force it was. There was a massive betrayal. And I'm thinking about that there have been so many betrayals, that betrayal is the name of the game. So I do not know about your evidence if there is not more betrayal in there. I think this whole thing of trying to get the truth is not, is a complex one. And I'm thinking now of you, Diana, when you put out your book, which to me, because I've never been on the left or anything, I immediately went, wow, this person knows how to research, etc. But you were attacked incredibly by so many people on the left who should have been your friends.
On the right.
On the right, sorry, yes. On the right, yes, they should have been your friends. Well, they were ex-left who turned right, and they supposedly had turned against the left and were right, and now they were attacking Diana. And so you were being betrayed by the people, except I don't know, did they know were they really people who were really on the right, or had their lives been all a lie? I mean, I didn't know, I couldn't figure that one out, if their lives were a lie, like people like David Horowitz, if he had spent 40 years lying.
Well, certainly they were protecting a narrative. And one thing about the attacks, I don't feel betrayed by them, really. It was a fascinating experience, but what was universal and was actually quite vindicating was all the attacks were lies. And I had to rebut them all, because the internet is forever. I was advised, rebut every single one. So I did, and I never found an attack that I had to issue a correction on, which I'm perfectly happy as a journalist to issue corrections. When you get something wrong, you correct it. But it wasn't that kind of it was disinformation. And what I think was fascinating about it was that this disinformation campaign drew the eye of intelligence professionals of the Cold War era, who suddenly saw something that they recognized from their own days fighting communism. So it was kind of an education. It was very upsetting and difficult and all of that, but it wasn't really a betrayal. It was just more revelation, I guess you could say.
Okay, I had no idea because I didn't know you. I didn't know you until I invited you on the summit. I just knew there were vicious personal attacks.
Well, it was an attempt to destroy the work and also to destroy my reputation. And so that's a very different kind of attack than just a debate or a critique, or you have different opinions about X and Y. It wasn't like that. It was a smash. And once you realize that and could really start to just push back fact by fact and just keep going on it, I was able to turn it back, at least in terms of the merits, which was what was important to me. And I drew quite a lot of people to the book who may not have noticed it otherwise, which was all to the good. And I will say that probably the great moment of vindication came when the late great Vladimir Bukovsky on his own took a look at the controversy and wrote really 2 quite remarkable essays about my book and also the controversy itself, which he recognized as a version of what had happened to him in his efforts to reveal. So this is what happens when you bring things out that are supposed to be, quotation marks, supposed to be hidden.
But I think that goes with being over the target area, don't you?
Exactly. Yes, very much so.
And
yes, so I mean, you're supposed to get energy from it. I mean, it can be, as everyone knows, it can be quite a trial, but it is that moment where you say, yes, it's because you are doing something that someone doesn't want you to do.
Another way, I mean, as long as we're talking about intelligence tactics, which is what we're talking about now, there is that where you get hit directly, and then attention comes to that, and then things can get sorted out along with the pain of going through whatever you're going through. I mean, it's a real sacrifice to put things out now. The First Amendment is pretty much in the closet. But another one is to marginalize people.
Yes.
And make them unimportant, to make, when you control the media, you can keep certain accounts far from the public eye. And I would say that that's the one that I primarily come under, because this geoengineering piece, as I was sitting listening to the 2 gentlemen getting into it, I was thinking, the geoengineered fires are geoengineered. They are coming from the sky, and they are using the aluminum oxide that is falling by the ton per year in America due to the chemical trails that have been made fun of by the CIA with the term chemtrails, which, by the way, is a U.S. Air Force Academy term. It's not a conspiracy theory at all that the term came from the military. So, I go into the geoengineered fires, and Jamie Lee in California is a tremendous expert on that. And Jamie is an old friend of mine as we throw things back and forth. But also regarding 9/11, I start out the 3rd book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, I guess with the Under an Ionized Sky, with a pure fantasy, I guess, in that I go through the 9/11 and show how it was a directed energy weapon with a thermite interior system behind it, because they never have one system for destruction. They always have 2. They have the backup. And I saw the same thing when Hurricane Katrina happened down in New Orleans back in 2011, was it? I, you know, at that time, you could see things on the internet, and I could see a system pushing the hurricane up the mouth of the Mississippi, and then suddenly everything going backward as one of the systems was withdrawn. And, you know, then you find out that one of the streets that was blown up because it couldn't reach that far. And that was the secondary system. But that was a directed energy weapon used to do the Katrina as well. And what makes me sad is that all of you incredibly intelligent people have yet to discover this geoengineering piece, which is so important to just about everything we're working on. So I really hope that you'll, you know, there are 3 books now that are out there. And, you know, I don't have a PhD, but there's probably, you know, research is a gift. And I want to show you that you need to understand the epidemiological background of them tampering with the environment all these years to make it absolutely unfriendly to the natural human being, because they are now bringing online the transhuman. And so, you know, this idea that the environment is the epigenetics of what's going on now with the jab in the arm, we've got to put these things together. We don't have another 10 years to work over here and argue this and we've got to read broadly and understand the mechanism by which they're doing this. But why aren't we? We need to be doing this. And you know, it's just taken a while for us to wake up to that. But I have confidence that we have that skill. We have that skill. We don't need a boss. We can all share information.
By the way, when I did my first Truth Summit in 2012, the first person I interviewed who did have a PhD, but it was in physics, and his area was Islam, where he hadn't even taken one undergraduate course. He said, we're all amateurs here.
Yeah.
Because there is no PhD in the things that we are exploring. And
yes,
amateurs has to do with love, loving something, being passionate about it, caring about it. By the way, Alana, I have been paying attention to, I haven't called it with your terms, but weather engineering, weather control, all of these things. It hasn't been my area of specialty because I am the ultimate generalist, like that I will read bits on everything to try to get a general understanding.
but remember, the geoengineering is not just weather. That's your conditioning. It has 7 operations, and one of them is directed energy weapons.
Yes.
And the other is mind control. That's another one from space. So, you know, you've got to at least get a general idea of the span of this. It's just incredible. And then I'll leave you all alone. I won't be muscling you to read.
I want to ask
books.
a question.
Yeah.
Alana, yes, I will read your books. I have been driven mad by it. I live in rural New England, and you can't believe the jet activity in my rural area. Why are they doing this? Why are they crisscrossing the skies in an area where, you know, it's a farm community and small broken down towns, you know, old mill towns, things like that? Why are they here?
Well, there are many reasons for when they build up a cirrus, it looks like a cirrus cloud cover, but what you're witnessing is the laying down of plasma. It is all plasma. It is dry as a bone. And one of the reasons they use the plasma is for communications and wireless operations that they're running. One of them can be weather. You know, you're getting a big storm front coming in. You're getting a big dry spell. All sorts of things. They'll lay a grid sky so that they can now use electromagnetics, particularly laser, from the Earth and from satellite to manipulate the atmosphere for the sake of whether it's communications, or it's, they call it C4ISR. That's militaries for command, control, communications, cyber warfare, and then intelligence SR, and I don't remember what those are. So you have this, it's as if you're looking at a circuit board now when you look at your sky. The atmosphere is no longer what it used to be 50 years ago at all.
No.
And so they are constantly manipulating the frequencies and recalibrating it in order to serve their military purposes, what they call dual use, which includes citizens and military. And so you in New England right now seem to me that you have had, let's see now, you had the snow ice thing, then you had a bunch of rain, and then you had a dry and heat, beyond belief heat. All of these things require preparing the sky because all the weather is engineered now. There is no natural weather except when it rolls off the South Pacific. And they pick it up down there, the geoengineers and the merchant marines and the US Navy, they pick it up down there and then they begin to manipulate it as they move it up and down the north-south, tack it to the jet stream. I mean, this is a technology that completely, 100% controls the ionosphere and controls the jet stream. They can drag the jet stream all the way down to Dallas. No problem. This is another era. And unless we pick up the threads of it in my narratives, in all my footnotes and things, we're not going to understand what's going on. And that confusion feeds the fear, whether we're conscious of it or not. That the weather, for one thing, it's not climate change. It's not global warming. That is a cover story for a very military operation that is highly classified. And the only way I've been able to write 3 books about it is the process of discovery, constant discovery, one book out of another, and being able to go through masses of papers, patents, etc., conferences, seminars, military, this and that, and contextualize it to see a whole picture. That's my strength. And my hope is that the PhDs, the guys out there, I mean, you can't really take courses in this because it's classified. Another 15 years, it will be declassified and everybody will have accepted it as reality. So I'm hoping that others will begin to write other than me. But I so far, I'm almost all there is. So, please add it to your repertoire. I know you're busy.
Ilana, could you comment?
By your bed and read.
Could you comment? Could you comment on the work of Dane Wigington, who's been on this for more than a decade as well?
Right, and I probably shouldn't comment on Dane because he has affiliations that I am opposed to, and I have nothing to do with him, and he certainly has nothing to do with me. But I think that what he's doing is very well funded, and he's what's called a limited hangout. He keeps the narrative in a very narrow strictures. He does not say that there are 7 major operations in geoengineering. He just talks about 1 or 2. He has brought in the nanotechnology, which I'm grateful for, but he's contextualizing it in a way that serves certain agencies' needs and isn't really the truth of the matter of what we're all suffering out here.
People need to be aware that folks like Dane Wigington, he worked for Bechtel, which was a big US military contractor.
It's a CIA cutout.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So as Ilana has said, he's trying to divert attention away from certain evidence. And I have a conversation between Mr. Gage and Mr. Wigington, who was responsible for starting attacks on Geo Edward Griffin and responsible for the food fight between Michael J. Murphy, who's no longer with us, who made the film.
Exactly.
Etc. So again, that's all documented on my website with audio recordings and videos for those that have such an interest as similar to mine to work out what the truth is there.
Right. Thank you for that, Andrew.
By the way, I feel so lucky to have asked you, Ilana, because I feel like I just homed in somehow on you because I heard you in an interview and I went, I want to interview her. She's really interesting.
Yeah, you had no idea about this
No,
geoengineering thing.
No,
I mean,
I
it's vast.
I just went, and you're saying I'm just about the only one who's done this for years and years. I hope other people, and I went, she just sounded right.
Yeah.
And I knew that Dane Wigington was much bigger, and I didn't ask him somehow.
Thank you. Thank you for that. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's understandable that people are confused that intelligence agencies are targeting what comes out about certain issues. And you have to live with that. I mean, in a way, I would prefer that there were a big assault, because then I could speak and I could, have the attention, have the limelight on me for a moment, so I could defend all this. But no, I'm obscured. I'm marginalized. I'm made a kook and a nut off to the edge. That, I've lived with that for 12 years now.
But everyone here, maybe not Reiner, and I don't know about you,
Yeah, we all do.
Charles,
Exactly.
that you were a crazy doctor, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're kind of a nutcase, etc. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't heard anything against me, but then the thing is, I'm really an expert at not looking at that. Like, you don't like my stuff,
Right. Right. No, it's wonderful that you invited me, and I'm very grateful that I saw a few faces that I knew, and I've met some more faces that I want to know more about. I really appreciate you. The people who bring us together so that we can, sand off those edges and really listen to each other are just terrific.
I'm
Just
seeing
terrific.
two hands, so I'm assuming they're intentional. On my screen, Charles Huff, then Reiner, and then there's me without a hand, but I have two of them. So, Charles.
Yes, my question was for Reiner. I'm very intrigued and encouraged by the legal work that he's doing, particularly with the Maoris. And I was just wondering if he could tell us. I mean, it sounds wonderful that they have an independent judiciary system that hopefully could hold either the New Zealand government or perhaps Pfizer or Moderna or somebody else like that accountable. But how will that help the rest of the world and other countries?
That's a really good question. That's the question of enforceability on the one hand, and on whether or not the evidence that we will get out through these hearings. We'll start with the real grand jury investigation. We did this as a model grand jury investigation about a year ago, but this time it'll be for real. And we think that the evidence can be used anywhere, because as we all know, this is a lockstep approach. They've done it everywhere in lockstep. It's no coincidence that all the governments, which I used to think are our governments, now we know it's Mr. Global's governments. Most of them are creatures of the Young Global Leaders school. We know that they all acted in lockstep, which means, and that's why I'm saying psychology is at the heart of the matter. But if you take a closer look at what happened during the COVID pandemic, it is obvious that there was nothing there. There was never a novel, dangerous coronavirus. It was just psychology. They started out with two lies, which came from Germany at the behest of the WHO. There's this weird person by the name of Professor Dr. Drosten of Charité University in Berlin. He's neither a real professor. His professorship was given to him by one of the richest German families, the Quandt family, which owns BMW, among other things.
I'm going to bring it to Charles' question, which is how are you going to enforce it?
Yeah. So the first step will be to hold the New Zealand parliamentarians accountable who voted for the vaccines, including Jacinda Ardern. She stepped down, but also we're going to bring what is called the putative defendants, will include WHO and Tedros, so that they will not be able to claim that they just acted upon orders. So that's the first step. That will be enforceable, whatever comes out of this. This grand jury investigation is only about, is this enough evidence for you, the jury, to issue indictments? And then the next steps will be criminal and civil legal proceedings, because we want, I'm a tort lawyer, I'm not a criminal lawyer. We want them to pay, because that is what's really important, to take them all down. They're going to have to pay so much that we need to take them down. So the first step is enforceable, because all the sheriffs and the marshals in New Zealand have to enforce such judgments. Now, there's two different judiciaries, obviously. There's the corporate judicial system, as they call it, which is illegal. And then there's the Maori judicial system. And the more important question, of course, is how do you enforce a judgment against Pfizer, WHO, or Fauci, or whoever? Well, we discussed that. This was one of the more important questions that were asked on our CHD presentation. We will simply have to start by attaching the assets of these corporations and individuals, their bank accounts, all the assets that they have in New Zealand. But here's another thing. One of these people, one of the representatives of the Maori, who I spoke with, Dexter and I spoke with, is very well connected with all the other indigenous people, the American, Canadian, South American Indians. They've all been wanting to go in the same direction, apply their own judicial systems, their own independent judicial systems, and using them to hold everyone accountable. The problem is that I believe that the only one that is really independent is that of the Maori, because they never ceded their sovereignty. They were never conquered by anyone. And this is different with all the other indigenous people, because as far as they have their own judiciaries, it's not really independent, at least not as far as I'm concerned, because they got it back from those. They were granted their sovereignty, their limited sovereignty within the system from those who took it away from them in the first place. And that's the major difference. Plus, these guys are really fiercely independent, fiercely independent. I mean, if you look at their haka dance, you don't want to stand in their way. You don't want to stand in their way. And also, I also believe, Charles, that this will be, because we're going to, this is going to be made public. People will hopefully be able to watch what we're doing. And I think this will have a motivating effect, even on the Western world, because if you had seen the reactions of the people who listened on this CHD presentation, when they spoke about how their legal system is part of its customary law, its natural law, is part of their way of life. It's about honesty, integrity, courage, all these values that many of us in the West have forgotten all about, because we think what culture is about is Kim Kardashian. No, it's not really that. It's the other values that count. And some of these people actually had tears in their eyes listening to them, because they thought this is all lost and gone. No. These people still have it, and we have a memory of that. That's why they were so touched. So I think it'll have an effect on even the Western people, the Western judiciaries. It'll be like a kick in the butt for those few German judges who are still willing to uphold the rule of law, but who need motivation. And this is the kind of motivation that we all need. I think it'll work. It'll be like it'll have a snowball effect.
Can you give us a time frame? What would be your guess for the Maori thing, then the guess for the first enforcement? We're talking about, I know you do not have a crystal ball in front of you.
I can't make any promises. I've done that before, because I thought that the first case that we filed, and that was going to be an international class action, we filed it with the help of our friend Michael Swinwood from Canada and Ontario. I thought this was going to work, but he was a little ahead of his time, because some of the defendants they came across as though I mean, the judges probably thought he's crazy because he didn't just sue, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Secretary of Health, and Justin Trudeau, but he also sued or his defendants included the Vatican and the House of Windsor. I think he was right on the mark, but maybe a little bit ahead of his time. So this time, since Dexter and I have been working on this since February, and we've had a ton of Zoom calls. Very difficult because for me it's always late at night, for Dexter it's always early in the morning. But we do believe that in either late August or early September, we will start with these proceedings. The first step, as I said, will be a real grand jury investigation through which we will present all of the evidence on the PCR test and the asymptomatic infections. This is how they got perfectly healthy people mass screened. But we will also include the backdrop, which is genocide. And we will also have expert witnesses, for example, Vera Sharaf, who will testify to the fact that this has actually turned into another Holocaust, except this time it's much bigger than the first one. And what she keeps saying is that the Holocaust never started with Hitler, but it didn't end with Hitler either. It hasn't ended yet. We will have to stop it once and for all.
I like that, once and for all. As I was saying, when Harry was saying this will go on beyond us, I went, no, this is not my impression of things. My impression is if you stop things at the root, then you have stopped it. And that is, in fact, what I believe all of us are about, not in pushing it down 2 generations, but in ending it. Now, Reiner, you also had a question, or anyhow, your hand was up. Whom did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just gonna, I was going to segue on what, on the directed energy weapons. I did this interview, and this is what led to my right to re-enter the US being canceled. Because I had to leave the States, our ranch in Northern California, because I wanted to do an interview with the one person who knows pretty much everything about microwave radiation, 3G, 4G, 5G. And of course, and that's a man by the name Barry Trower. He is your real life James Bond. He's now 79, very smart man. He has a degree in, I think, in mathematics and physics. He knows a lot about human biology. And he started out as a Navy diver. He worked for MI5 and MI6, debriefed Soviet spies during the Cold War, but he knows everything about microwave radiation and how it has always been used as a weapon since the 1930s. There's this German professor, retired professor, who unfortunately died late last year. He was 98 years old, Professor Karl Hecht. And he, who had been in close cooperation, he's from Eastern Germany, from the former German Democratic Republic. And we interviewed him before he died. And there were at least 1,000 studies out there that say that microwave radiation is dangerous, can be really dangerous. Radio frequencies, frequencies in general, can be used as weapons. And that's what the military, not just in the Soviet Union, in Germany, and in the US have been doing since the 1930s. On the other hand, and that's circling back to you, Andrew, and to you, Elsa, this can be used for a good purpose as well. Frequencies can be used, as he explained to us, for healing people, of course. We've known this for quite a while. But the potential, the bad potential, is wide-ranging. It goes beyond geoengineering. It goes into mind control. He said, give me 30 hours and I'll turn any perfectly peaceful person into a serial killer. So maybe some of the mass shootings, there haven't been any before 1999.
Let us say goodbye to Celeste. She's just messaged me. She has to leave. Let's say goodbye and then we'll continue. Goodbye, Celeste. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, Celeste.
And Alana, you're not alone in the
Exactly
in the trenches, and neither are any of you. we're all working together, and that's really what we need to do. Is not, I mean, their expertise,
Yeah.
with all their weaponry, is getting us to divide and splinter, and then we become defeated. So we really do need to come together, because we have a vast array, some of which you all are alluding to. And I have just spent 8 weeks, 3 hours each week, plus Q&A, talking about. So anyway, I just want to wish the best, and it's a real honor to be on the panel. I'm just kind of talked out. I'm like, I just finished this yesterday, and I'm just like,
Well,
and
thank you
know
for making it here. Thank you.
I know
because
you've all
you could have
been
so
there.
easily said no.
Yeah, so I wish I could. There's a lot of places I would have liked to have chimed in. I just was still in mode, and then I'm have to ramp up with this, how to wrestle with AI and get my voice out there. So never ending battle. So anyway, we'll see you guys later.
All right,
Good
Phyllis.
luck.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye-bye.
And back to Reiner. I was not trying to stop you. It was just, I wanted to acknowledge Celeste's needing to go from exhaustion.
Now, just to sum it up, these 2 interviews that I did were 2 of the, I was in England then, and I spent 3 days there. These 2 interviews were of 2 of the most important interviews, 2 of the most interesting interviews I've ever done. And if you have a chance to watch it, it's on ICIC. I wasn't even able to bring my crew with me, so I was there filming him with my cell phone because I didn't have a choice. But this man is brilliant, and
So who
he's
is
out
it,
there.
Renner? Who is
What?
it?
It's
His
on
name again?
ICIC.law.
And then the name of the man?
Yeah, then the name of the man, there's a search thing, and you'll find him.
Okay.
He's brilliant, and he's fun to talk to. Very nice man. But, you know, he worked for MI5 and MI6, so he probably knows how to fight too.
It's concerning.
Reiner, can you just tell us his name again, please?
Barry Trower. That's Barrie. That's his first name, and Trower, Trower.
No,
Thank
I've
you.
listened to that interview with you, and it's terrific. Absolutely
Pretty
terrific.
cool, isn't he?
He's great. I've got his address because he doesn't have a phone.
Yeah. Well, he has a phone, but you can't reach him because he doesn't believe in using Wi-Fi. You can't reach him via Zoom.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right.
But he's been under attack. He's been under attack. They actually tried to kill him, but he survived.
And he knows what HARP is. He
Oh,
knows.
yeah.
He knows. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay. Are there more questions? By the way, I didn't know you were so close to the end, Reiner. I thought you had more to say, and I didn't want, because Celeste wrote me, I'm just leaving now. And I went, no, say
It's all right.
goodbye.
It's all right. No, I just wanted to bring people's attention to this person, to this man, Barry Trower. I really admire him, and plus he's funny. It's fun to talk to him. I wish, you know, someone like Carrie Mullis was still around. He's a very witty guy. He would be so much fun to talk to.
Well, his death was very suspicious, I think.
Yeah, something was
The timing.
Yeah. Mm.
Could I ask you a question? Because I don't know that I'll be able to get in touch with you again. Are part of the Maori who are coming forward for this legal move, are they kings?
Here's the thing. The Maori are important not just because of their independent judiciary, but also because of their independent communities. This is when we do start a new system, I think this is what's going to happen. We have to have our own individual self-sufficient communities with their own tailor-made, custom-made systems of education, healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And it's happening already, and they have it. And that's what they call hapu. It's a larger, sometimes smaller communities, which are totally independent. They actually call themselves hapu nations. and their representatives are the Rangatira, that's the chiefs. But the thing is, to get them to unite, this is like a microcosm of the rest of the world. To get them to unite is kind of hard because of their sometimes fiercely protected independence. But for this cause, actually, the first time I was on a Zoom call with Dexter and some of the Maori, there was this one man, he is a chief and also a chief justice, and we tried to explain to him about PCR testing and mRNA, and he said, oh, come on, you don't need to tell me that. And he explained to us that he knows everything about CRISPR technology and all that. They've known this for 50 years, he said. We knew this is coming. There's a prophecy. And this is the time for us to restore justice for the world, not just for the Maori. This is part of their legal system, if you want to call it that. And that's why I think this is perfect.
Well, I have been asked by 10, they call themselves kings in New Zealand of the Maori, to come and visit because one of the kings found my book, Geoengineering Transhumanism, and sat and read it for 2 or 3 days, and then sent me a check for several $100s to order a book for each king. Now, I'm embarrassed to say I have not taken this seriously because this is so out of my ken. I can't imagine that would be true. So I've been sort of shining these people on, and I feel now very badly about that. But I don't know that I am of any help. But they seem to feel that I need to be present while they make this move against the government. And I don't know what to do because I they'll pay for my trip and, the whole thing. I just don't know if it's serious, and I have to be careful in my life like you do, So
yeah.
What do you think? What do you think? Should I trust this?
Depends on who it is, It's Dexter and I are like we're walking through a fog. We had no idea how divided these people are, much more so than we in the Western world. But I do think that this is finally. We've been talking to so many different people and leaders in that country. I think we are now talking to the right group of people who are doing everything in their power to unite the people. It's been really bad there. Excess mortality after the start of the vaccination campaign was especially high there. We spoke with Professor Denis Rancourt, who you probably know. Charles knows him, I'm sure, from Canada. And but what we found out is that Jacinda Ardern paid as an example, paid 53 million New Zealand dollars to a motorcycle gang. I forget the name of it, like Hell's Angels, who then forced the indigenous people to get the vaccines, even though there was no official mandate. That's how they did it. And they bribed many of the people. Some of the Rangatira, some of the chiefs sold out to the system. So that's what makes it so hard to get those who really make a difference, who are on our side of the fence, to come to the table and unite for this one big cause. But it looks like the pieces of the puzzle are finally coming together.
I'm going to give you my answer, which is totally non-fact based, because Reiner, you're giving an excellent answer, giving all the facts. My usual answer to these things is go to sleep asking yourself the question, what does my inner self say if I should go or not? And, like this Truth Summit came from my asking myself over and over, what should I be doing? I know I should be doing more. So, and by the way, it wasn't only that, it was that I heard somebody else who was totally not suited to do summits talking about what a horrible experience she'd had, and something twigged inside me, but I was also asking myself. So that is my thing. Reiner can give you the facts, but whatever the facts are, you probably have the answer inside you.
Well, I think I'm going to try to find out a little more, because now I hear there are several groups. And I didn't hear that before. So now I need to find out more.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
can
you're
put you in
finding your
touch
own
with-
way.
Elsa,
yeah,
I'm gonna have to say goodbye.
yeah.
I'm being summoned. But thank you so much.
Thank you for
I'm-
being here.
Thank
I don't mean
you.
to interrupt. Thank you all. Bye now.
Bye.
I can put you in touch with Dr. Rima Labo, unless you're in touch with her already.
Oh, no, I know Rima. Yeah. Why
Okay.
do you think she would be helpful to me?
Well, she's also in touch with some of the people there, and she has gotten an invitation, and I think she's about to go there. Maybe she can give you a better understanding, because she may have taken a closer look at all the different people who came and asked her to come. I am relying on those people who we, after, I don't know, 50 or so Zoom calls, who we have come to believe that they can be trusted. And because there too is a lot of infiltration.
Exactly.
They're trying to steer us off course. In fact, there was this one guy who wanted us to argue in a court of law, in their court of law. Doesn't really matter what court of law is, but he wanted us to argue that there's a novel, dangerous coronavirus out there, and that's why but the government made many terrible mistakes. No one made any mistakes. This was intentional. There was no novel coronavirus out there, especially not a dangerous one.
Right. Okay. That is very interesting that Rima is going. So I will. I'm going to think about this. Thank you so much for that, Rainer.
Sure.
And really, if you need to take that out of the interview, that whole private question I had, feel free to take it out, because I just didn't feel I was going to be able to catch him again.
No, you
You know,
can.
the one thing I hate about Zoom is it's a pain in the butt to edit. It really is. Skype is a pleasure to edit. That's why I was interviewing everyone on Skype. So super easy. It was set up to edit. I don't know about the Zoom technology. It's fine if you use it beginning to end. So it's all or nothing. I don't think that your question is, Reiner, are you uncomfortable about that, what you said?
No, not at all.
No,
And I'd be very happy if you could send each other's contact data so that we can get in touch with each other.
Everybody here?
Yeah.
Okay, I will go and I will do an email, and instead of BCCing, I will CC all of you.
Oh, that'd be good. Thank you.
Okay. Have we come to the end of not the line, because the line continues on tremendously, but have we come to this station stop?
Think so.
Okay.
It's exactly 2 hours. Perfect.
Whoa. Okay. Okay. Well, that had nothing to do with the 2 hours. But anyway, it's been a pleasure having you all here. And you know what? I totally believe in go with what happened. So the Q&A didn't happen. And somebody suggested a Q&A here. It was brilliant. Thank you for the suggestion. Thank you, all of you. It's a pleasure, and may the adventure continue. And I know the answer is absolutely yes.